but the thing is essentially a 12th century fortress. And within there are monks living, and there is a temple. So we're going to show a few pictures of those if you can stand to look at a couple things that are birds. This was a ceremonial gate just outside the Zong, which was constructed to commemorate the marriage of the current king, Jigme Wangchuck, the 5th king of Bhutan, to his bride, which took place about 20 or so years ago. This is the Zong that you see just to the right of center down in the valley, taken from up here where our hotel room was. And you can see there's this long river winding its way through the valley, and the Zong, it runs right past the Zong. And again, 12th or 13th century, I believe, for this building. Sorry. To get to the Zong, you have to cross the river on a rather elaborately carved covered bridge. So we took the opportunity for a selfie there. One thing that we saw in this village and we learned is that the school children in Bhutan wear the traditional Bhutanese garb as their school uniform to school every day. So this little boy is wearing the male outfit, which consists of a tunic and black leggings and large white cuffs. This is our guide, our bird guide, Sherab Dorji. We had 2 bird guides. One was Bhutanese. Sherab was the Bhutanese guide. Our other guide was from India. You'll see him later. Sherab was an excellent bird guide, but this day he turned for half a day, for one afternoon, into our cultural guide. And to do so, he donned his traditional outfit, again, with the dark tunic, big white cuffs, black leggings, and he also has some kind of a shawl that's part of the outfit, and the Zong in the background. So the Zong is literally covered with these amazing carvings and friezes and paintings and murals and all kinds of ornamentation full of Buddhist iconography. These are dragon figures. Bhutan means land of the thunder dragon, and it gets that name from the abundance of mountain valleys that during the colder months will fill up with fog and mist. And then the various winds will cause these fogs and mists to move in a sinewy way through these valleys. And mythologically, people thought those resembled dragons. So land of the thunder dragon. An elaborately decorated building. There's a monk in the foreground. This is a courtyard just outside the temple. We were allowed to visit the temple, and it was spectacular. I'm afraid you weren't allowed to take any photographs inside, so we cannot show you, but it was amazing. These are characters in the Drongsa language, which is the Bhutanese language. Bhutanese people are ethnically descended from Tibetan people from before the 11th century, migrations from the north. So they're ethnically Tibetan folks, and they have their own language, but it is related to Tibetan language. One thing that I like to point out about these paintings and such is there's all these intricate repeated patterns, and every single thing you see there, you look at it and you're like, oh, they must have used a template. No, not a single template to make anything, even though there's a character repeated 50 times. Everything is by hand, and that's part of the Buddhist philosophy, that there are small imperfections, and small imperfections are part of the universe, and they're important parts of the universe. Here's a dragon you see, a royal kind of dragon, and these look like snakes, but they're actually the back ends of 2 dragons that are facing north. This is all hand-painted, carved relief. From our hotel room, they lit up the Zong at night, so it's quite spectacular, as you can see. Back to the birds.
So oriental turtle doves were pretty common in urban areas, and this one was actually on the grounds of the Salem there. And then we had long-tailed shrike along the roadsides. We saw a few of those, not that many. We saw several species of minivet. This is the scarlet minivet, and most of them are pretty similar, so they were difficult for me to tell apart anyway. It's just, you had to get a really good look at where exactly the red was and the black. And then the Pallas's fish eagle along the river there with the song in the background. And then a common kingfisher on the river. And a Siberian stonechat was along the road there. Little ringed plover in the gravel and sand along the riverside. And there's some ducks out on the water, and this red-crested pochard was just never really got his head out, but we did get enough to identify it. This is the blue rock thrush, a different subspecies than the one that showed up in Oregon this year. This is another minivet. This is either a female or immature, because it's yellow instead of red there, but this is a short-billed minivet. And then we had a green-billed malcoa, which is a type of cuckoo. Another bulbul, the red-vented bulbul. And then a spot-winged starling. You can see the spots on its wings. We had quite a few flycatchers, and it seems like a lot of them are blue. So this one's called Vertitor flycatcher, which is Vertitor is apparently a color of blue. Then we had gray langurs. There are different subspecies and possibly different species of gray langurs, but as I was saying, the Buddhist country, they're very friendly to their wildlife. And one of the stories we have is that we saw, I think just one time on the trip, a leech, and it was actually on my pants leg. And one of the other participants took it off and he was going to kill it. And Sharab came running over and said, no, 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 no. And he insisted on moving it to the side of the road because we were on the road. So it's serious. And then this is a collared owlet, which is a somewhat diurnal species of owl, and the guides would use owl calls to try to get other birds to come in, and this is one of the calls that they use. So we often got collared owlets in addition to some of the other birds that were coming in. And then this blue-throated barbet, it's really brightly colored, but when it's up against the green leaves like that, it kind of blends in. And then another rock thrush, the blue-capped rock thrush. And I was really interested in these Arisamas. They're related to jack-in-the-pulpits. And I identified at least 3 different species just along the roads when we were birding. So this one is called the whipcord cobra lily. Here's a stupa along the road. And a Himalayan prinia. It's a pretty drab looking bird, but they can be hard to get to sit still. So there's prinias in general. So this was a nice to get that guy cooperating. And a rufous cap babbler. We saw a bunch of different babbler species, and here's some more of the Buddhist prayer flags decorating a bridge. And they just leave the flags out there forever. They have the prayer printed on them, and so that as the wind blows, the prayer is going out, and they eventually just disintegrate. And a yellow-throated fulvetta. Another Arisama cobra lily. This one's got stripes on it. Oh, okay. And then this is a rusty-fronted barwing.
It really has bars on the wing.
Yeah, it has bars on the wings. You can't see the wings in that picture. Ashy bulbul. and white-bellied airpornus. Is this the vireo one? This is that the airpornus are the closest relative to vireos in Asia, so if you want to know what it's related to. And we saw a few different species of woodpeckers. This is one of the more common ones, the gray-headed woodpecker. Okay, and then when we were at the lower elevations, we ended up, this one afternoon was the one hot day we had. Most of the time it was pretty cool, kind of wet, but not really raining on us a lot, just kind of foggy and damp. But this day was pretty humid and hot, and we were actually at a sewage pond where we saw some nice birds, including these lesser whistling ducks. I'm pretty sure one of those is a common sandpiper and one might be a wood sandpiper, but it's kind of hard to tell from the picture. And then we had a white-breasted water hen also at that site. This added a lot of water birds to our trip. And a black-crowned night heron, the same species we have here. They were roosting in some trees, so didn't really get a good, clear view. And then the citrine wagtail was just hopping around on the mud, poking away at things with this bright color. Okay, so great hornbills are one of the most spectacular birds we saw. These things are about 4 feet in length, and there were a bunch of them. We saw quite a few, and these were just like kind of crashing around out up in the trees. Is this where you start?
Yeah, my turn. Yeah. So, and yet another species of primate, golden langur. This is an endangered species. However, we found it to be rather locally common. We didn't have a tough time finding it, so we were in the right place for it. And as Karen was saying, these practicing Buddhist people believe that the world has space for all creatures, including golden langurs. So we got real nice looks at them, and they got real nice looks at us. They just kind of peered at us and went about their way. This mom has a little baby, and she let us watch her care for the baby, which was really cute. We saw golden langurs several different days. So we got really nice treatment from our company. You can see the bus we were in right there. It was quite comfortable. For just 8 clients, 2 bird guides, and 1 driver. The fellows that are standing there were 3 out of 5 guys of our ground crew. This was about a 15-day trip, and out of all those nights, 4 of those nights we spent camping. But more than 4 of those days we spent out in pretty remote areas where there really weren't restaurants. You can really stop someplace for meals. So they had to arrange for a ground crew, and many of those days a ground crew would precede us out into the field, and then we'd go our merry way birding. And by the time lunchtime rolled around, we'd come around a curve and, well, there it is. There's a table set up with chairs and food ready to go, ready for us to eat, and a latrine, and everything you'd want. And so we would sit down and have our Coca-Cola. They would also, on the camping nights, they would have our tents all set up, including cots, sleeping bags, all the gear. So these guys worked really hard for us, and they did everything they could to make us have a nice experience. These were the tents. They were very comfortable. Again, we were on cots, not on the ground. You could stand up in the tents, and everything was really nice there. While I'm thinking about it, so I don't forget later, I've got a little display over there if you want to take a look afterwards. There's a map of Bhutan on the wall that kind of shows our route. The flag of Bhutan is on the left, which I think is one of the coolest flags in the world. It's one of only 2 flags that have a dragon on it. And on the right, you see one of the more elaborate Buddhist prayer flags. As Karen was telling you, the prayer flags flutter in the breeze, and the wind conveys the message of the prayer, which is literally printed on the prayer flag out into the universe and cosmos. And that's more elaborate than most of them are, but you can actually go see that the prayers are indeed printed directly on the flag. There's also a Bhutanese field guide that we used and a couple of other books and our trip list. So if you want to look at species, feel free to look at later afterwards and
Those flags behind the tents.
those are prayer flags as well. They're very old ones, so they've faded out and the words aren't visible on those anymore. So this was the shrine we were right next to. And we have some prayer wheels here. You see right there, and there's some bigger prayer wheels behind that you'll see another picture of. These kids were waiting one morning as we got up for the bus. They're going to school. And I thought they were cute, so I snapped a picture of them. So here's the shrine we were camping right next to. These small prayer wheels, you can see the Trongsa characters on them. Those are characters that convey some sort of prayer. So as you turn the wheel, it exposes the characters to the atmosphere and the prayer goes out and is broadcast. Same thing here, only these are big, large drums that you can turn. And as you turn them, you send the prayer out. This is our other guide he was from India, although he lives in the UK most of the year. His name's Leo D'Souza, and he's from Goa, which is in Western India. But he leads the India and Bhutan trips for the company that we use. And I took this picture, which we all laughed about later because it looks like he's posing for a statue or something, but he's really just pointing to where he heard an owl the night before. But we teased him a little bit about this heroic nature of his pose there. He was a fun-loving guy. This is probably an old Chinese army truck that they were using for the ground crew. So they would put all our tables and chairs and tents and everything and kitchenwares and everything, and that's what they drove around in to carry all the gear. There's some landscape pictures. I took most of the pictures that aren't birds on this trip, and Bhutan is one of these places where you can just kind of close your eyes and point the camera, and it's just so beautiful. This is in the foothills of the Himalayas. There are these very verdant valleys. There's two trogons that were on the trip list. Asian trogons is a different family than the New World trogons. To me, they look more stout and kind of I don't know, plump, rather than a little bit more streamlined than the New World trogons, and they're a little bigger. This one was the easier one to find, the red-headed trogon. I think this is a female, yeah. I think we saw red-headed trogons a couple of times. Pin-tailed green pigeon. So in these tropical places, these Asian countries tend to have a lot of these interesting doves and pigeons. This was our first trip to Asia, I should add. We've been all over the world looking at birds, but we'd never been to Asia before. So Bhutan was our first, and so far our only Asian trip. So nearly every bird we looked at was a life bird. Not exactly every, but nearly every. And so laughing thrushes is something we hadn't seen before. There are double-digit number of species of laughing thrushes in Bhutan, and I'm sure there's many others in Southeast Asia. Most species of laughing thrushes are gregarious, and they tend to move through the understory of forests, foraging together. And they're not always easy to see, but usually easy to detect. You can hear them or see the motion. And this particular guy gave us a nice look. This is a tree pie. Sometimes it's pronounced treepie, but our guides called it a tree pie. This is an Asian family of corvids, or group, I should say, taxon of corvids. They're quite large. They're actually even bigger than magpies, some of them. I was a little surprised to learn there were piculates in the Old World also, not just in South America. This white-browed piculate was one of two species that we saw in Bhutan. A lot of roadside beauty, of course, driving along the mountains, driving along the slopes, a lot of cascades, little waterfalls coming down, a lot of narrow verdant valleys, a lot of misty Oregon-like weather on different days. Back on the subject of small blue flycatchers, blue-throated flycatcher. Looks like he's singing his heart out. Euhena is a family of small passerines that reminded me of parrots. This guy reminded me of tufted titmouse in its appearance and its behavior. They're really alert, curious little birds like chickadees, tits, and such. Black-chinned euhena move around in little mixed flocks like these other birds. Here's a rather majestic-looking barred cuckoo dove with the sort of burnished coppery colors on the back of it. An encore look at the great hornbill. This is a beautiful portrait shot of a male, and I don't know, can't be overstated how impressive this bird is in person. They're just enormous. I think some of you may know the story of how they, when they breed, they find a hollow tree and the females are in the tree and they basically create a mud wall and wall her in for a number of weeks. And the male has to feed her through a little hole. And they do that, I suppose, to keep predators, snakes and things, so from getting in the nest. It's kind of incredible. There's several species of bee eaters in Bhutan. They're not easy to get pictures of, but this is a blue-bearded bee eater, which is a great bird for alliteration fans. So bees are creatures too, and Bhutanese people have respect for them as well. They have respect for these bees, or perhaps they were hornets. Were they bees? They were bees, she says. Because we were walking along the road one day and our guide spotted these hives quite far, like 100 feet above us on the cliffs. And they said, well, stop. We can't walk past there. We're like, what? These bees are very aggressive and they can be dangerous if they come down and start to harass us. So we have to get the bus to come and take us past that place, to take us about a quarter mile past that so that we didn't aggravate these particularly unwelcoming bees. There are more species of hornbills besides the great hornbill. We saw at least 3, might have been 4. I'm not exactly sure, but we saw these quite a number of times and they're very impressive as well. Rufous-necked hornbill, this is the male and this is the female. She's got more rufous. She's got an entire rufous head and a nice white tail. And he has that sort of scored looking bill with the blue skin around his eye and the orange gular pouch. And these guys were exciting to get a look at as well. More small flycatchery things, the small niltava. And we had a really nice trip mammal-wise as well. Like I said, I think we had maybe 7 primates and a number of other nice mammals, not all of which were expected. So these smooth-coated otters were a nice little surprise alongside the river. Sultan tit, quite an impressive bird with this lovely golden tuft that is rather impressive. You get a good look. We didn't see many sultan tits. I think 1 or 2 days we got them. Karen mentioned the babblers. There are babblers, there are wren babblers, there are tit babblers, and there are scimitar babblers. And there might be more than that, but those are the 4 I know about. And this is a scimitar babbler, and as you probably would have guessed, it has to do with the shape of the bill. Its long, down, curved bill. Scimitar babblers in behavior were very much like our thrashers. I think that's the same ecological niche that they're filling over there. Scimitar babblers, and they also have a lot of different vocalizations they make, just like our thrashers as well. So I think they're the old world analog to new world thrashers. Oriental magpie robin is a cute little black and white job that is quite common in towns, cities, in the country. It's kind of all over the place. You see them everywhere, every day. Or Oregon magpie, it's kind of like your mascot. They're all over the place. Here's a beautiful verdant valley with the river flowing through. You can see a little bit of cultivation on the left side. I like this picture. It probably doesn't appeal to everyone as much as me, but we were standing on the road with the slope behind us and slope down in front of us. And this group of hornbills flew from above us over our heads. And then they just descended. They just floated down and down and down and down. into those trees, and you can see them, they're still in their floating posture, and they're floating down into those trees, and it was just kind of a surreal moment when it happened. All right.
Okay, everybody's familiar with chickens, but we actually saw a red jungle fowl, which is what our chickens, domestic chickens descended from, so. We saw exactly one, this is it. I'm not sure which bulbuls these are, because they're so backlit, but they were posed nicely on a bamboo sprig. The streaked spider hunter, they glean insects and spiders from plants, and also they will feed on nectar. So this one is probing these flowers, so presumably it's getting some nectar in there. And then an orange-bellied leaf bird. We saw a lot of different waterfalls. They were all beautiful. This is one we stopped next to for lunch. And yeah, there were butterflies around there. One of the mammals we saw is the hoary-bellied Himalayan squirrel. And then the Malayan giant squirrel, which is huge. We decided it's about the same size as an opossum, the body itself, and then it has this huge long tail that it uses as a counterweight. So when it's just sort of hanging there with the tail holding it in place, helping to hold it in place. Here's a view from the road looking down. We were birding on these roads along in the mountains on these steep slopes. So, and then a little stream that crossed the road. And here's one of the roads that we birded along. So yeah, most of the birding we did was, if we weren't in the vehicle, we were walking along roads. There weren't really any other, trails or anything to walk on, but most of them didn't have much traffic, so it wasn't a problem. And yeah, this is a concentration of butterflies, and I think there's at least 6 or 7 species in this picture, and there were a bunch more that were just hanging around this area. So archery is the national sport of Bhutan, and we saw in just all the little towns we went through, they would have archery ranges. And so people were out just shooting their bows, and these guys, if you can see, they have really high-tech bows, but there's also people that use traditional bows to shoot. And it's, what'd you say, 175 meters is the length of the archery range. More scenery, it was pretty. And then there were some orchids that, a few that were in bloom, and this one, I'm pretty sure it's a foxtail orchid. This is another one. And then crimson sunbirds. So sunbirds kind of fill the role of hummingbirds in the old world. So they feed on nectar. We saw several species of sunbirds. And then a Eurasian wryneck, and I think this was the only one we saw, perched on a wire. And it was a very attractive wire because several other birds were perched there, but this is another red-vented bulbul. And then there's another owlet that in this area that we're out during the day, the Asian barred owlet. And another bee eater, the chestnut-headed.
Okay, so here we are again in the sort of in the foothills here. This was a house. A family was living here, and our company apparently would pay them to allow us to camp in their front yard. So we did. And it was a very nice place to stay, and there were some nice birds we found in this area. Charging our devices was at a premium, so we had the We had the maximum number of things plugged into the maximum number of power strips to juice up our devices. Everybody's camera batteries and phones and everything. Yeah, something strange happened. These young fellows just showed up one morning and our guide said, yeah, they're making a documentary about sustainable ecotourism in Bhutan for the state television. And they say, well, they'd like to interview one of you guys, and all other 7 people took a step backwards. And I ended up doing it. So they asked me a few questions like, how did you find out about Bhutan as a place to travel? And are you enjoying our country? And would you come again? And of course, my answer that I thought of later to the final question was, yeah, if you're paying, I'm coming again because Bhutan's really expensive. But anyway, I joked to my my guide who also, Cherub also appeared on this. And I said to him, this is gonna be on Bhutan TV? He goes, oh yeah. I said, do you think the king will watch me? And he took me completely seriously because I was just joking. He goes, yeah, maybe. I think so. Yeah. So the king may have seen me on television. So my claim to fame. So one day we went on a road and I don't know, some of you have been to Peru or Bolivia or
They look just like that.
yeah, some of those countries like that, and I've traversed things called the road of death and that sort of thing. So we went up this road, up this very steep canyon one day, and our guide the day before had said something mysterious like, well, there's a few kilometers that are challenging, but it'll be fine. You know, I don't know if he would use the word challenging, but it was something benign like that. Well, it was challenging. You know, no guardrail, narrow, chance of meeting vehicles coming the other way. And if you've been on these roads on birding trips or other trips, you know that you learn to sometimes you and your partner just stare at each other's eyes. You don't look out or down or front. You just look at each other and go, I love you so much. Here we are. Or you just look down, or you just close your eyes and hum, or you rock back and forth or something. You just trust that the driver is doing his thing. So, but this was really something. So we came up this canyon for hours. And then we went and we finally crossed the river, and then we're on the other side and we're about to head off in a different direction. But we stopped to take a look at how we had been. Now, I want you to see this. That's the road we came on, cut into the bare face of the cliff. And if this was, if you were next to me on my iPad, I would zoom in on it and show you that there's a white pickup truck that you can actually see right about here. You can't see it at this level, but it's just right about there, just so you can see where the road is and get a scale for how high up you are above that river. So you can actually see part of the road back here too, and here. So we were glad when that part was over, even though it was thrilling in its own way. The roads evened out, and to be honest, most of the road system of Bhutan was unexpectedly good. Well paved, well marked, well signed, that the commonly traveled roads were. That road was an exception. Here's a big stupa in a village that we passed through along the river. Stupas always have a path around them because it has to do with how Buddhists treat them. But if it's a small stupa, people will walk around them multiple times and do their prayers or meditations. And if it's a large stupa like this, if you're driving through this town, you will actually drive around it and then continue on. And we just saw people doing that because that's what you do with driving stupas, I guess. They didn't call them that, I just called them that. Yeah, common sight, whatever they're looking for, I had already seen it, so I thought, oh, I'll take a picture of the group. So we got a fair amount of warbler neck looking up slopes at things. Now we're getting up into some nice heights. We're probably at about 9,500 feet here, maybe 10,000-ish. Looking down some of the beautiful valley. This was a lovely day. And having lunch in the field, it was sunny, so they gave us a canopy, so we could sit in the shade. Some more butterflies. Karen thought we saw albatrosses on this trip. Apparently there's a butterfly called the common albatross. Another of our parade of bulbuls, the striated bulbul. Another picture of the mountains, similar to the other one, but in this one you can see a road cut. And I think we may have been on that road. I can't say for certain. When the road before that I made such a big deal about, I tried to ask the driver where we had been because I had that map. And I showed the driver the map. I said, can you show me which road we were on? And he acted very puzzled. And I thought it was because he didn't speak English, but it wasn't that. He knew what I wanted, but the road wasn't on the map. That's what confused him. It took me a while to figure that out, and then it kind of scared me. Another little temple that we went by, and here you can start to see they did some terraced cultivation here in this area, that some of these high mountain valleys. This was kind of a frustrating morning, but kind of funny too. This is Leo, our guide from India. This is Sherab, our guide from Bhutan. And there's some little skulker in there. I don't even know what it was. And they spent almost half an hour trying to get that little sucker to come out and show itself. And I think at some point, each one of them got a tiny glimpse of it, but none of our group saw that any hide or hair of that bird. Although it chipped the whole time, I think. Chip, chip, chip. Yeah, more warbler neck inducing looks up the slope. So this is a real big target bird. Ward's trogon, I don't think it's an endemic of Bhutan, but I think it's very difficult to see anywhere besides Bhutan. Because it has a very restricted range and it's, I don't think it's a numerous bird anywhere. So we looked for this for quite a while. One day we got lucky and found one. I was even luckier. I found it before most people did and got a good look before it flew further away. And so then the guides had to spend a better part of half an hour trying to coax the bird to come closer and closer. But finally, everybody did get suitable photos of it. That's really a striking bird with that blue eye and beautiful carmine color and the blue and green on the wings. Ward's trogon. Ultimately, the bird ended up where people saw it was back in these trees here. But we had to climb over this rock pile. It's a construction rock pile. They were always working on these roads everywhere up there in the mountains. And this is us climbing back over after we'd seen the bird. So everybody has sort of that glow of victory to them. So, but we're all trying not to break our necks falling off these rocks. And fortunately, nobody was injured. Another of our laughing thrushes, the white-throated laughing thrush. Another cobra lily, dancing crane cobra lily. Another of the barbets. Again, these are old world barbets. That's a separate family from the tropical New World barbets that we find in South America. Golden-throated barbet. Okay, here's another orchid. Dendrobium nobile. Is that the foxtail or different from the foxtail orchid? Another small blue flycatcher. Pale blue flycatcher. A deceptive butterfly. The orange oak leaf. You can see its antennae on the left. And its legs down here. Russet sparrow is a weaver finch like a house sparrow, and it looked and behaved very much like a house sparrow. This is a female. We saw them several places. All right, here's the other big prize, and it's not a great picture, but this is the bird on the front of the Bhutan field guide, the beautiful nuthatch. And as Kathy mentioned, nuthatches are kind of a thing for us, especially Karen. That was her master's degree bird, the white-breasted nuthatch. So we always enjoy seeing nuthatches anywhere, including our backyard. And this bird was difficult. It's not easy to find anywhere. Like the Ward's trogon, it's not numerous. It's not common anywhere. Bhutan it's not an endemic, but Bhutan's one of the best places to find it. We searched for the third day we found it. We didn't find it the first 2 days. We found a lot of other birds, but finally found a pair, and we got suitable looks at them. And then it was getting darker, so it wasn't that suitable for making good photographs, unfortunately. But we were all very excited and felt the afterglow of seeing the beautiful nuthatch. So we decided to show you this picture, which was behind the passport control in the airport. of the beautiful nuthatches. It's a little bit better photo, but we didn't take this one. But you can see they are beautiful with those lovely white wing linings and gorgeous. Yeah, more just stunning landscape scenery. Couldn't get enough of that. These are gray langurs in the higher elevations. They seem to be a little darker for whatever reason. Maybe they were a different subspecies, as Karen said. This bird, the only one we saw, honey guide. Some of you are probably aware of honey guides. It's an old world family, and these birds eat larvae from hives, from wasp, hornet, and bee hives or nests. And I'm not sure what fits this role in Asia, but in Africa, generally they'll have another animal that tears the hives open for them. So these guys can get to the larvae that are inside. So in Africa, that might be a honey badger or something like that, or humans too. So other animals learn to follow these birds because these birds will lead them intentionally to the nest where the other species will tear the nest open, and then this bird can have something that's left over. And they weren't easy to find in Bhutan, but our guides knew where this one was, so we kind of had it staked out. It shows a nice little waterfall across the valley, falling behind a road cut there. And another little roadside shrine. We saw these just in the middle of nowhere. You'd pull up and there would one be. More lovely little waterfalls. This is a little forktail. You can't see the tail too well. They have these long forked tails, kind of like a scissor-tailed flycatcher, not quite that long, but they're black and white. And there's about 4 or 5 species in Bhutan. They're all black and white, but the pattern's different. And generally, they're very skittish. So when you drive up to one of these roadside streams, if you open the door, they fly away. But this guy didn't. For some reason, he didn't care and gave everybody a chance to take pictures. And they sit on the rocks there. They feed they be the place you'd expect to see a dipper here on the rocks. They don't go underwater like dippers do, but they hang out on the rocks where the stream is rushing past, and they eat insects and larvae. More water coming down, as you can imagine. It's everywhere off of all those mountains. More little blue flycatchers, pygmy flycatcher here. Here's a different species, olive pipit from, we ended up camping our 4th and final night camping. We were sort of in a pasture. So there was a little bit of a grassland there. So there were some more grass type birds there. Karen mentioned sunbirds before. This, I think, was the most common sunbird we saw, the green-tailed sunbird we saw nearly every day. And you can't see his tail, but the rest of it is quite spectacular, as you can see. Green shrike babbler. This guy kind of reminded me of ruby-crowned kinglets. Okay, I think this is Karen. We're getting towards the end if you're getting bored.
Yes, so this satyr tragopan, this was the only one of these we saw. It was just right along the road, and I spotted it from the bus, so we got to take pictures of him, but didn't see any more, but they're really spectacular. So here we're in the evergreen rhododendron forest, and this is just kind of what it looks like. So we were out there looking at birds.
This is about 12,000 feet.
Yeah, pretty high elevation, about 12,000 feet. So we're out there looking at birds, and our driver, who doesn't speak English, his name was Tenzing, and he got out and was looking somewhere else because he was pretty good at finding birds, and he knew what a lot of them were. But he came all of a sudden. He was 20 yards away or so or more. Anyway, and he starts yelling, and he says, "Red panda, red panda!" And so we all went running up there and got a nice look at this red panda who just sat there for about 20 minutes without really moving, just kind of watching us. And we all took pictures of him, as many pictures. So we got bored of taking pictures. He was just, and he finally started to move a little bit, and then eventually walked away. But That was pretty amazing. Our guide, Leo, had said he has been guiding like 2 trips a year to Bhutan for 20 years, and this is the only second time he'd seen a red panda. So we got very lucky seeing that. So this is another one of the places we camped where it was a house where somebody lived, and they just let us camp in their back pasture. And the gentleman was making cheese and giving people a tutorial on how he did that with Sharab was translating for us. And we were at pretty high elevation here, so we're at 12,000, 10,000, 11,000 feet. So it was really cold at night, and they gave us these hot water bottles, which we were kind of skeptical about, but they actually did keep us warm. They stayed warm all night, and that really helped a lot. And, you know, I noticed that in the background, this is a picture of the king and queen. And I think there might be a picture of them there too, but we saw a lot of pictures of them around, just people had them hanging up on their wall, and they have at that time they had 2 small children. I learned that they had another baby last fall. So they're quite an attractive family. And then we were at these high elevations, we found these blood pheasants, which were pretty common and also very photogenic. So it was hard to decide which picture to keep. So, and then these black-faced laughing thrushes, another laughing thrush up there. And another green-tailed sunbird. Just a sort of a different habitat type here with a more open ground. And this is just a stupa shrine along the side of the road with more dragons. And here we are with Sharab, our guide, and this is at the pass, which was, how high were we?
Oh, this is probably about.
Yeah, so we're pretty high up there, and it was pretty foggy, but and more of the evergreen rhododendron forest. Then we got down to a valley where it was a lot more open, more agricultural lands, and there was actually a dead cow down below us, and there were a bunch of Himalayan griffins feeding on it, and they started flying around. So it's a type of vulture. And this is what the landscape looked like there. Somewhere down there is a dead cow. And then there was black-rumped magpies. Another shrine.
So we didn't spend a lot of time in towns or cities, but we did have this one stop for a couple of hours in a small town that had what might pass for a couple of little shops that tourists might find something in. The town was called Bumthang, and it's probably one of the larger towns in Bhutan, but it wasn't large at all. And so we went in a couple of little shops, and they had a lot of nice handcrafts, including wooden carved masks like this, with spiritual figures and other hand painted items, and some textiles, some traditional Bhutanese garments and that sort of thing. That's where I got that flag, the national flag, at one of those shops. This was the Davy Restaurant and Bar in Bumthang. Actually, I was surprised to find that nearly all of the signs were in English and in Trongsa both. So I don't know what that means. I mean, the British were there in Bhutan at some point, but we don't know how much of that influences what's left over. But anyway, they've got some traditional Bhutanese food there. So if you want some, that's where to go. This day, one of our last days, we went to a monastery, which is a pilgrimage site for certain Buddhists that go through on a certain trail through Bhutan. come to this place, and we were on a pilgrimage to find one last target bird. But one thing we did find was our only view of the high Himalayas. We were in several places where you theoretically could see the high Himalayas, but we couldn't because of the weather, clouds, the fog, the mist, whatever. But this day we were blessed with, they're probably 100 miles away or something, but we could see them. Those are probably around 20,000 foot mountains over there. And it was pretty breathtaking. The high Himalayas in the distance. And we had high altitude birds. The white-winged grosbeak was one of them. We had a pika too. Wells pika were kind of around the grounds. White-collared blackbird. This is the temple, or the top half of the temple, with some prayer flags. We were told that this open grassy area was a good place to look for snow pigeons. And there was a small flock that took off, but one guy stuck around to get his picture taken. So that's a snow pigeon, and it's quite an attractive pigeon, I must say. We were thankful that this guy wanted to be seen. Here's the temple again. You can see the ground crew is actually setting up our breakfast table right there, just outside the temple door. We had breakfast right there in the plaza. It's about 7:30 in the morning right there, and it's cold. Well, this is the guy we came for. I apologize that the photos aren't great. There's some good excuses for that, but the monks feed the Himalayan monal. And so the monals come out of the forest and come up there and kind of wander around, and they're not afraid of people. And the males, at this time we were there, the males were displaying with the females, for the females. And if you get a nice look at them, you'll see they have this beautiful iridescent rainbow of colors all over their body, which you can only see a little hint of here. This one, you can kind of see it a little bit better. He's got kind of a sunset on the nape of its neck. We got really nice looks. It's just that the photos didn't come across too great. And here's the object of his desire. She's quite attractive. She looks kind of like one of our grouses a little bit, except for the blue skin around the eye. The female, we did get a nice look at the female, or a nice picture of the female. You ever had crossbills? I don't know. What was that? What type is that? Type 4? Type 7? What type is that? Whoever thinks they know, tell me what type that is. Large-billed crow is common. It's the regular crow of Bhutan, and it's well named. They were in the cities, they were in the country, they were ever present. Here's a monk walking to work, coming up the hill to this site, and we are here. There he is. He had passed us by, and he's heading up into the temple. This is us with our Indian guide, Leo D'Souza, again, who lives in the UK and in Goa, India. And he was super personable, really great bird guide. Both of our guys were great. Northern wheat ear, not expected in Bhutan, so we had to stop and have a big confab about that. But there's another zong across the valley. We didn't visit but the one, but we saw several others as we passed through. I think there are 29 zongs in Bhutan. Each one governs an administrative district. We did see yaks, not a lot, but we saw yaks in a few places. And all the yaks we saw, I believe, were domesticated yaks. Some of them had ear tags, but it would be along the road. So any yak you saw there certainly belonged to somebody. I know they do use the milk. Karen looked this up. This is a Himalayan keelback snake. And you can decide if you think his eyes were bigger than his mouth, but he looks like he wants to make a meal out of that frog or toad. And he was just on the road doing his thing. We didn't, in case you're interested in herbs, we didn't see any other snakes, did we? That might be the one other snake. Oh yeah, that's right. There was one other snake just near the shoulder of the road, and some guy had stopped traffic because he wanted to make sure nobody ran the snake over. Again, the Buddhist thing. Okay, just about the last place we visited on the trip was Chele La. La means pass in Bhutanese. And this was close to the highest place we were on the whole trip, 13,000, just over 13,000 feet. And the wind was whipping a little bit. It was quite cold. It was really foggy. And just below the pass, we found this Darjeeling woodpecker, which sat there for a long, long time, gave us really beautiful looks. And here we are up above the pass, maybe 100 feet. We climbed up the hill, and you see the prayer flags, it looks like a battle has happened there 100 years ago, and the battle refuge is still left. But those are, of course, old and battered prayer flags. You can still see printing on some of these, though. Some of them are newer. Just about the last new bird we saw on the trip was the yellow-billed blue magpie. You can see his beautiful black and white tail there too. It's a gorgeous bird. So here's our road crew, our ground crew rather. We gave them a tribute and a send-off and a nice tip and thanked them profusely because they really did do everything. They brought us tea, they brought us more food, they heated things for us, they set up our tents, anything we asked for. They were really nice young fellows. Now we're back in the Paro Valley, heading for the, we'll go to the airport the next morning. You can see this is one of the few places that's not in the southern part of Bhutan where they do some cultivation because there's a big enough valley. So you can see they're growing quite a bit of rice here. I do know that they import much of their food from India. India is by far their biggest trade partner. And there are a lot of Indians working in Bhutan as well that come up to do seasonal work. So this is Sharab, our bird guide, Sharab Dorji. This is Tenzing, our guide. They are brothers-in-law, they married sisters. This is Norbu, he's also related to them, I wasn't exactly sure. Sharab's got 3 children, these 2 daughters and this son. This is Sharab's wife and her mother. And we were invited to their home for a meal on our last night in Bhutan, which was just a wonderful experience. They served us Bhutanese food and welcomed us into their home. And they were just so hospitable. And we had a lovely time meeting with them and talking with them. This young man was fun to talk to because his English was quite good. I should mention Sharab's wife is something of a famous person in Bhutan. She was one of the first female archers to compete internationally for Bhutan. And in fact, she was the first Bhutanese person to compete in the Olympics. She competed in Beijing in 2008 in the archery. And that's how they met. Sharab was an archer as well, and they met through archery competitions. So anyway, they were a delightful family. We loved meeting them and spending a little time with them. And here we are in the airport. There was a little bit of an art gallery that we took some pictures before we left. And we got on this plane, Royal Bhutan Airlines, and we flew to Delhi, and then we flew to Newark, and then we flew to O'Hare Airport, and then we flew to Des Moines where we were living. And then we went to sleep because it was a long trip. But those are our adventures in Bhutan. So thank you for indulging us, and I hope you enjoyed the photos. And we're very happy to answer any and all questions that you have about Bhutan culture, birds, traveling there, logistics, anything you like. Any questions? Yeah, Pat.
How many species did you see?
Pat asked how many species we saw.
338, and since this was our first trip to Asia, 283 of them were lifers.
Okay.
There was a little overlap with a few birds we'd seen in Australia. I think that's where a few of those, and Europe as well, things like the kingfisher. And yeah.
And then time of year, when did you go?
We arrived around,
Please repeat the question.
oh, sorry. She asked what time of year we went. We arrived in Delhi. We stayed in Delhi the night before. So it was I think it was the 16th of April, we arrived in Bhutan. And we arrived at home on May 1st. So it's basically the second half of April we were there. So it was just kind of spring in those areas, yeah. Yeah.
Just very curious about the archery. If do they hunt animals or they not a warfare type of thing?
It was originally a warfare thing.
Repeat the question.
Sorry, pardon me. Thank you for reminding me. He says he's curious about the archery. Did they hunt? Do they hunt now using archery, or did it arise through warfare or some other means? And I can only speculate. I saw nothing that suggested they do any hunting. We both of us really doubt they do any hunting with archery. I think it originally came from warfare, and then became a sport from that. Yes,
What kind of food did you eat?
you want to talk about the food a little bit?
I can talk about the food. Well, I'm a vegetarian, so I thought it was great because they have a lot of vegetarian food. I mean, they serve meat too. But it was similar to Indian food, I think, a lot of, you know, curry kind of things. What did you have? Chicken and stuff like that.
Chicken.
But yeah, a lot of rice and beans and that kind of thing. I really enjoyed it. Stuart's biggest complaint was that it wasn't hot enough, but I mean, like temperature hot. So, because they would, you know, when it was out in the field, they'd have this crock pot, but there was nothing to plug it into. So it was heated up somewhere else and then carried out there.
I was very nervous about eating food that wasn't suitably hot just because of stomach issues, you know, some of you sympathize with that, so.
Did you have any problems?
I did, but I don't think they were food problems. I think they were mountain road problems at the beginning, or a combination. So I had about 2 days that I was pretty uncomfortable, but other than that, it was fine. So I don't think I got food poisoning, but I was really aware of that, so. I could describe the food as kind of a cross between Chinese and Indian, maybe leaning a little more towards Indian, but I didn't find it spicy. And that was a little disappointing. I don't know if they dumbed it down for us because we're Americans, like unspiced it, or if they just normally had kind of bland food, but anyway, she liked it a lot.
What kind of photographic gear?
How long a lens did you use?
How long of a lens was used?
Well, that's
After I got my new camera.
Yeah, you did that.
I'm trying to-
Yeah, describe your photographic
My
gear in general.
camera it's a Nikon Coolpix P950, something like that. So it's a, you know, one of these all-in-one zoom lens. I've tried other kinds of cameras, but when you're birding, I just don't want to carry around a big, huge lens. So it's nice to just carry around something smaller.
What was your, Tim, what was yours?
That was the same.
Same question.
Camera equipment.
And you put about the elevation, because you were over like 12,000 feet. Did you take anything for that?
No, we didn't. We didn't even think about it. It was because we'd been to, like in the Andes in South America, and at least the first time we went to the high elevations, we took altitude medication, but we didn't this time.
And
We're okay.
No, nobody in our group had any altitude problems on this trip at all. And we went up sort of gradually in elevation, but not super gradually. So I guess I wouldn't have been surprised if somebody had a problem, but nobody did, which was lucky. Yes,
I don't know if it's Bhutan or another country in that area, but something, being the #1 gross national happiness.
yes, that is Bhutan. He asked about the gross national happiness as a way of measuring, you know, life. Quality of life, I guess. Yeah, you've probably heard of that. Yeah, Bhutan sort of took that and ran with it a little bit. Their tourism people did to try to get people to come and see how great things are there. And you know, it is a really nice country, but they have problems like every country. They have some poverty. There are places in the country that are where people are pretty much living the way they did in medieval times, some very remote areas. They're working hard to modernize the country. So you might know that it's difficult to get permission to go to Bhutan. They have a limit of 9,000 foreign visitors per year, which is a very small number. And so you have to book through a company. And so someone is supposed to be responsible for you when you're in the country. You can't just buy a plane ticket and show up and go like you can in most countries. So you have to book through some contact in Bhutan. And then they're in charge of you. Now, they don't have to keep you like in their sight all the time, like, you know, like Russia or something in certain tough parts of history where somebody's following you all the time. But somebody always knows where you're staying and the reason you're in the country. So there's some oversight of some sort. we were always with our guides, although sometimes they just let us, if we were in a little town, they let us wander around or something like that, but. You might also know it's expensive. They have a surcharge for visiting the country of $150 a day per person. And that's just to be in the country. That's not to get lodging, food, guide, nothing. So this is expensive, of course, to go there. And they use this money to improve their infrastructure and to modernize the country. The current king, Jigme Wangchuck, the 5th king of Bhutan, became king when his father, who's still living, Jigme Wangchuck IV, abdicated about 20-something years ago, because that man was not educated. And he knew that Bhutan needed to enter the modern world. And he knew to modernize the country needed to be led by a man who was educated. And his son was educated in the UK and in the US. And so he intended that when he sent his son for education, that when he came back, he would abdicate and his son would become king. So the king is very popular because he's personable and he's attractive, and he married a beautiful Bhutanese woman who's modeled, attractive. She's also Western educated and cultured and graceful. And they had 2 beautiful sons when we were there. So their family picture was everywhere. And but he is working to move the country from a monarchy to a democratic parliament. Sorry, parliamentary democracy. That's what I'm saying. They're moving towards a parliamentary democracy. So they're trying to democratize the nation and make it less imperial the way it is, because they figured that's the modern way to go. So they're modernizing their health systems, they've modernized their transport system and so forth. And they're very wisely using tourist dollars to help do these things. So, but they still are managing to keep a lid on the number of tourists because they want to keep it a livable place. Like you said, the gross national happiness probably has something to do with not exploiting every single resource you have at once, which is kind of what the Chinese are trying to do, because they're doing that in a lot of parts of the world. So we saw a little bit of Chinese influence, Chinese people in there Chinese companies doing infrastructure stuff and trying to get political influence and economic influence in Bhutan. Nobody asked this, but I found this an interesting question that I had to kind of discover on my own, that why is Bhutan, it's this tiny thing between India and China, why didn't one of those countries just gobble it up? I mean, it's so small. And, it would be kind of like, there's Oregon and there's California, and then there's just kind of Lake County was its own country. It'd be like, well, why doesn't one of those states just take it? Because they can. But I think that the physical reason is because it's a difficult place to do anything. It's hard to get around. You can't really mobilize troops through there. The road system isn't fit for that. People can't go cross country because there's mountains, there's rivers, there's chasms, so moving people in that country is very difficult, for one. And even if you did, then in order to occupy it, you'd have to use an exceedingly large number of people to control it. It does have resources to exploit, but I think they're trying other ways other than, military ways to do that. But geopolitically, it acts as a buffer between China and India, which don't get along very well. Now, of course, China and India have their own borders, but those borders are not really peaceful. Things are pretty tenuous at those borders. And Bhutan is a nice little geopolitical buffer between those. So I think either if Bhutan was taken by either country, it will be seen as an enormous act of aggression by whatever the other country was. So we learned some interesting things about the geopolitics of Central Asia by traveling there.
And the name of your birding company again was?
So our birding company is Partnership for International Birding. This is about our 6th trip with them, I think. We've been to South Africa, we've been to Jamaica, Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, with the same company. And this one, Colombia, also Colombia. We like them because they're not as expensive as the three big ones. But the reason is they pick local lodgings and local restaurants and local guides. And part of your money goes to local ecosystems. And you're not paying an American guide to travel with you and go around. You have a guide from the place that you're at, and you're patronizing local businesses. So the money stays in the place. And the places that we stay are fairly nice, but some of them are it's kind of rugged and rough, and things that people that normally travel, let's say with Victor Emmanuel, would go, ooh, I can't believe you stayed. I mean, it's a little rustic once in a while because you're out in the middle of these places and you just kind of have to rough it once in a while. But conversely, sometimes you're in very nice places. So, but what I'm saying is they're not always focused at, you know, oh, you're always going to have a 3-star hotel to stay at if you travel with us. No, sometimes you might, but.
As guides in those countries. I did a trip in Uganda. We had a Uganda guide who had studied in England, so he spoke perfectly good English. He lived his whole life in Uganda and knew everything about that country that you ever wanted to know. So when you go with PIB, you get local people who many of them have been educated in the US or in Europe, but they're local people, they live there, you know, they're not coming in from somewhere else. You know, it's not like a lot of the big ones, you know, they'll have some guy from Cincinnati who will meet you in Cuba. That's not what you get with PIB.
We just went to Brazil with Lillis
Yeah.
in August, so yeah, we had a good time with him as well. Thanks. Others? And wrap it up.
Thank you.